Welcome to CivilNet. My guest today is Harry Hagopian, who is based in London, an expert on Middle Eastern churches, Jerusalem generally, the Armenian community there, and Armenian community church relations. Harry, thank you, and thank you for joining us again.
My pleasure.
Harry, let's talk a little bit about the results of the election process. His Beatitude Nurhan Manoogian was elected. He is going to reign a good long time, it seems, given his age. Tell us a little bit about his background. He's not from Jerusalem, although he's from the Brotherhood.
No, he is certainly part of the Brotherhood, and that is what enabled his election this time round a few days ago. Archbishop Nurhan Manoogian hails from Aleppo in Syria. He is 65 years old, so by patriarchal terms, he's quite young, which means...
My terms too.
Normally, he should be able to have a good 1 or 2 decades as Patriarch of Jerusalem. And for the last 15 years that he's been in Jerusalem, he has been the Grand Sacristan, or what we call in Armenian the Lusar Arabed, the person who is responsible for the running of the church, church liturgies, church rites, etc. And now that he has become Patriarch, that role of Grand Sacristan has been given to a fellow Archbishop in the Patriarchate, Sevan Gharibian. So in a sense, it's a reshuffling of cards within the community itself. Interestingly enough, Salpi, when Patriarch Torkom passed away, the expectation was that there would be 2 running horses for this position. One was Nurhan Manoogian himself, and the other one was Archbishop Khajak Barsamian of the Eastern
Diocese, Eastern Diocese of the Armenian Church, yes.
But Archbishop Khajak decided not to run in those elections, so that recentered the choices, and finally this man was chosen to be the next church leader for this small community in Jerusalem, across Palestine, Israel, and Jordan.
Given the complex responsibilities and partners for the Patriarch, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, tell us about his language skills. Does he speak Hebrew? Does he speak Arabic?
I don't think he speaks Hebrew, or at least as far as I know, he does not, but he certainly speaks Arabic, hailing from Aleppo in Syria as he does. So it's a little bit difficult to prejudge what the Patriarch would be, because it's almost entirely a different persona. I remember, for instance, just to give you an analogy, Salpi, when Pope Benedict XVI was elected as Pope of Rome at the Vatican, everybody was wondering what kind of a pope he was, and everybody relied on his time as the head of the Congregation of the Doctrine of Faith. And there he was known to be very conservative, very radical, very austere. Yet as Pope, he has changed because his position has changed with him. So in a sense, it would be interesting to watch the journey that Archbishop Nurhan Manoogian undertakes once he is enthroned officially as Patriarch, after the 3 temporal authorities have agreed to the result of this election. However, Archbishop Nurhan, who of course speaks Arabic, is also somebody who's known to be forthright with his opinions, to be combative for his rights and the rights of the Patriarchate. And we are talking about a political situation in the Holy Land now, where with the situation within Israel itself, with the ructions and changes happening within the Palestinian and Jordanian countries as well, it is very important to have somebody who is first steady as it goes, but also who is outspoken enough and forthright enough to give his views and defend the rights of the Armenian community and its church and institutions, not only in political terms, certainly in political terms, but also within the larger Christian ecumenical dimension, where you have all those different churches resident in Jerusalem. So he faces a lot of problems. I mentioned to you in our earlier conversation about the issue of real estate. I mentioned to you the issue of status quo. I mentioned to you the issue of the school, the Tarkmanchat school within the compound of the Patriarchate. But there are other issues as well. For instance, pilgrimages. When you go for Christmas and Easter to Jerusalem, and it is the Catholic or Greek Easter or Christmas, you see loads of pilgrims coming to Bethlehem or Jerusalem. We don't have that same manifestation for Armenians. I think we should think about that. I think we should even facilitate pilgrims by building up a hostel which could then welcome some of those people coming from across the world. When it comes to political issues, we should be a bit more committed to our rights as well. And I'm not talking about silly rights. I call them silly. They're not silly by some constitutional norms, but issues about 1 inch to the right and 1 inch to the left in a church. I'm talking about the whole demography and the whole geography of the Holy Land, and what rights do the Armenians have to exercise their freedom of worship and also their freedom of domicile and residence within a country that is beset by so many political tensions.
Harry, let's talk demographics. To what extent is the power and the authority of the patriarch determined by numbers? Does it matter that the numbers of the brotherhood are dwindling? Does it matter that the Armenian community in Jerusalem is now in the low thousands? To what extent do those kinds of issues affect his power, his ability to maneuver?
Of course, they affect his power and his ability to maneuver, Salpi. Interestingly enough, if you look at the three key parties to the status quo arrangement, you've got the Greek Orthodox, you've got the Catholics in the form of the custody of the Holy Land, and then you've got the Armenians. And of all those three, the smallest by any stretch of the imagination is the Armenian community. So in a sense, when you look at all those numbers of Armenians who used to be in that part of the world, in what we euphemistically called the Holy Land in 1948, and then onward into 1967, and I'm using calendar terms, 48 being the creation of the State of Israel, 67 being the Six-Day War between Israel and the Arab countries, and then if I push it forward to 2000 and into the new millennium, the Armenian community has dwindled so much that there are more Armenians certainly outside the Jerusalem than there are within Jerusalem. So in a sense, the weight that the patriarch and the patriarchate has diminishes considerably because of those demographic realities. However, this in a sense also explains what we were talking about earlier when we said that they're so ferociously protective of the status quo arrangements, because as your rights diminish numerically, you then try to lift them up legally by trying to stick to the letter rather than the spirit of the status quo. And in a sense, I think it would be sad when the day comes when the Armenians in Jerusalem, whether it's church or its institutions, lose the vision that would actually attract people rather than encourage people to leave and go elsewhere, largely to the West. So in that sense,
what's the context in the other communities, the Catholic or the Latin community, the Greek Orthodox community? Are numbers dwindling there as well?
Certainly the numbers are dwindling there as well. If you go back again to 1948, Salpi, which is the calendar date I started with just now, you had roughly 25% of the population being Christians. And we're talking about indigenous local Christians, largely Arab, but also of other ethnic identities. Now, from 48 till now, that has dwindled from 25% to roughly 2% overall. And within that overall 2%, which is infinitesimal, you have also the Armenians, which are such a small community with a small number. However, what strengthens the hand of Armenians is that although their numbers are dwindling indeed, they still have a lot of religious shrines which they have had, and on which basis the status quo arrangements during the Ottoman period were established. So yes, demographics are on the low, but geography is still pretty much there. My worry is, how do we match demography and geography together. To do that, we need vision, not only a good manager, a good administrator. Yes, we certainly need that. We also need good spokespersons for the Patriarchate in Jerusalem, as we do anywhere, whether in Echmiadzin, in Antelias, or in Constantinople. But what we also need is the vision, and that vision is something that we have to reactivate. And I'm just hoping, I can't tell you what it will be or how it will manifest itself, but I just hope that it will be able to sustain the Armenians within this ever diminishing community of Christians across the whole land.
Thank you. Inshallah is probably the right word with which to conclude.
It's a nice word. Inshallah is a good word to use.
Thank you, Harry Hagopian in London.
Pleasure.
We've been talking with Harry about the newly elected patriarch, his beatitude Nurhan Manoogian, and the challenges facing him in Jerusalem. Thank you for watching CivilNet.